Hello, my name is Jason Faria, and I will be showcasing my implemented mechanic. So first things first, I will jump right into the gameplay. We can see these are the yellow tiles, which are random bonus or negative effects. So these tiles can be changed pretty easily. Currently, not every tile has a random bonus effect. Only a certain amount of tiles that I, as a designer, set have the random bonus effect. So it's currently set to 2. So 2 of these 4 tiles that are back here actually have a random bonus or negative effect. So if we step on one of them, we can see this tile had nothing. As you see on the top left, it's printed to the screen whether it has a random bonus a random positive, negative effect, or nothing. Step on another tile. This one also has nothing. So that means these last 2 tiles have effects. This one was a positive effect. This one was also a positive effect. So we can launch it again. Now this one had the positive effect, and this one had the positive effect. Launch it again, trying to get the negative effect. So there's the negative effect. So now I had 2 negative effects and 2 positive. So as you can see, these tiles randomly change. It's currently set so the effects only happen one time, and then the effects are gone after the player uses it once, which can also be changed. So now that I have showcased that, I can also show how the effects actually work. So if you look at the stamina, it's a little bit down. The negative effects are currently set up to lower stamina, and the positive effects raise your stamina. So positive effect, you see how I got the stamina back. And another positive effect, so I got the stamina back, but my stamina was already full, so right there you see I got a negative effect, and my stamina went down a little bit. So now that I have shown the tiles, we can actually take a look at these tiles and how they're set up. So I have 2 blueprints to show. The tile and this blueprint actor, which is placed over here just so we can see it better. I added a square as the actor, but essentially this actor controls which how to randomly set up the tiles, so which random tiles are selected and whether or not all of these variables are set up. So these variables include total amount of random tiles, which should be less than the amount of total tiles. If you have more than the amount here, it will actually break and it won't work. So this has to be less than the amount of total tiles. So if there's 3 tiles, so with these 4 tiles I can't set this to 5, because otherwise there isn't 5 tiles for this to randomly set to a random positive or negative effect. So with 4 tiles here, this is automatically set to 2 by default. This shows whether or not the tile can lose its effect. So it's set to true by default. And the amount of times the tile can be used. If the tile cannot lose its effect, this won't matter. You can set this to whatever, and the tile never loses its effect. But if you set it to true, then this number matters. I can set it to 3, and then the amount of times I can use the tile would be 3 times. So I stepped on this top right tile here. I can step on it again. That's the 2nd time, and the 3rd time, it's a positive effect. So it's random every time. So if I step in it a 4th time, nothing will happen because it only has 3 3 uses to them, which is default of 1. And then here, positive percentage is set to 50 by default. This just states how likely it is that the player gets a positive effect. So it's a 50% chance for a positive effect. If I set it to 75, there is a 75% chance for a positive effect when you step on the tiles. So now that we have those variables out of the way, we can actually look at the tile itself. So we'll go into the tile blueprint, and this is just a simple duplicate of the message tile reworked. So when you step on the message tile, it'll print a string. Similarly, when you step on this tile, it does the random effect. So if the player, so this first part checks if the player entered the tile. If that's true, so if it's false, nothing happens, obviously, but if the player does enter the tile, then we go to the next part, and this checks if the tile has an effect. So if the tile has an effect, so if it doesn't have an effect, it'll print nothing, as you saw in the editor when I was playing. It'll print nothing, but if it does have an effect, then it comes over here, and it this is how it selects a random positive or negative effect. So the positive percentage, it checks the percentage. This should be defaults 50. So it'll say positive percentage, and it'll check it against a random float from 0 to 100. So this random float essentially states that if this random float is less than or equal to the positive effect, then you do the positive effect. If not, you do the negative effect. So we can take a look at this positive effect here. And this positive effect is very simple and can actually be implemented to do whatever effect the designer chooses. So this positive effect, first it prints the positive string, plays the sound of the positive sound, and this is the entirety of the increasing or decreasing stamina. So this positive effect increases stamina, it gets the pawn, refill stamina by 10. That's the simple positive effect I have set up currently. Negative effect is very similar. Calls a custom event, prints the string negative, plays the sound at when you step on it for the negative sound, and gets the pawn of the player's pawn, refills stamina negative 10. So this loses 10, makes the player lose 10 stamina. So we can set this to a different variable, we can promote it, and then set it in the editor to test. The entire effect can be changed. So this is the positive effect, or this is the negative effect, and then this does the positive effect. So this is very easily changed, so the designer can choose however they want to actually use these effects and what these effects actually do. After the effect happens, this then comes over here, and this section basically says whether or not the tile can lose its effect, and if it can lose its effect, then it'll say how many times it can be used. So we have a branch with tile loses effect set to true by default. If it's false, then the tile can't lose its effect, so nothing happens. But if it's true, then over here we say number of current uses. We set to number of current uses to number of current uses plus 1. So this increases the number of current uses that we have used the tile, which is set to 0 by default. So if you have 1 current use and you step on the tile, this will increase to 1, and then over here it checks if the number of current uses is greater than or equal to the number of total uses. And if that is true, then it sets tile has effect to false, which is used over here to check if the tile has an effect or not. So when it's set to false, the tile no longer has an effect, and it runs out of uses. This total number of uses can also be changed easily through the editor. its current use is 1, and that is changed to over here in the editor. So you can actually click on this purple box and change the amount of times the tile can be used, whether or not it has its effect. It can lose an effect. Once again, the positive percentage and the total number of random tiles that are actually spawned. So now that we covered the tile, we can cover the second blueprint, which is the random tile generator. So this procedural random tiles is how the tiles are set up, essentially. So the first thing that this blueprint does is, on event begin play, it'll make sure there are actually random tiles. So event begin play, it gets all the actors of class tile random, which is the tile random here. Then after that, it sets this array variable to all of the tiles. So it gets all of the actors, and then it sets it to this array of actor variables. After that, there's a branch here to check if the length is greater than 0. So this checks if there's actually a number of random tiles. If that is true, if that is false, then there's no random tiles. If that is true, then it actually continues and randomizes the tiles. So if that's false, so for example, I can come over here and I can actually set all of these back to tile floor, update tile type, and then once again the branch, so if there's no random tiles, if there's no amount of random tiles, it'll say no random tiles, and it will print that string. So you see no random tiles in the top left, so I can set it back again, tile random. So now there is random tiles. It doesn't print that no random tiles string anymore because there's actually random tiles for it to work with. So now that the amount of random tiles has been found, it sets current random amount. So this variable is here so that if the designer chooses to use multiple levels, they can throw this blueprint in each level, this actor in each level, and this will reset the randomized generation so that it works for every level, and then it randomizes tiles. So this is the thick of the blueprint here. I will go through all of these nodes. So after it checks all the actors and it makes sure there's random tiles to work with, it randomizes tiles. So this is where these variables are set. The variables here, this is for the total amount of random tiles. The tile loses its effect, true or false. Amount of tiles that can be used, amount of times the tile can be used. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 times, and how much positive percentage the tiles actually have. So over here, when it randomizes tiles, the first thing it does is it makes sure the total is greater than 0. So total amount of random tiles is set to 2 by default. That's where you set it over here. So it makes sure this variable is greater than 0. So if your total amount of random tiles is greater than 0, that the designer set, if it's not greater than 0, it prints no random amount set. But if it is greater than 0, then we continue. So that means that we actually want to set a number of tiles to random. So, and then here starts the while loop. So this while loop states that while the current random amount of tiles is less than the total amount of random tiles, then we will continue this loop. The current random amount is set to 0, which is on begin play over here. This, like I said, resets just in case you want to use it within multiple levels. so it'll reset itself. So this current random amount is always set to 0, and the total amount of random tiles is set by the designer to be however many tiles they want of the yellow tiles to be randomly selected as having effects or not. So this while loop is set up. So while this number is less than this number, so while 0 is less than 2, it'll start the while loop. So the first thing in the while loop, it gets a random one of the tiles from the array of tiles that we set earlier. So random tiles, this is set from here, from get all actors of class tile random. So this gets all of the random tiles, and it gets a random tile, and it takes its index and it sets it to this variable, index to randomize. So now that we have a random tile index of this array of tiles, this is the index we want to, so this is the index of the tile we want to set to be random, to be selected for an effect. So the next thing it does is it sets the randomly chosen tile to have an effect. So this takes the tile, it gets this index from this array of tiles, so the index that we set here, and it sets tile has effect to true. So this variable is on the tile itself. If we come back over here to the tile itself, remember we checks if the player entered the tile. Over here it says tile has effect if it's true or false. Then if it's true, it does positive or negative effect. So this variable is set in here. So it sets that tile that it randomly chose to true, so it does have an effect. So that tile does the effect that is set. Next thing it does, this while loop does, is whether or not the tile loses its effect after it's used. So it's a branch to start off, and it says tile loses effect, which is the variable you can set in the editor on whether or not the tile loses effect. It'll branch check if tile loses effect. If it's false, then we get the index to randomize again. So it gets the same tile that we've been working on, and it sets tile loses effect to false. So that tile cannot lose its effect. If this is set to true, then it'll set that index that we are working on to tile loses effect true. When this is set to true, this also sets the number of total uses to the amount of times the tile can be used. So this is the other variable that we have that is public over here. So we can set amount of times tile can be used. And this sets the variable of the tile. So this sets the variable of the tile to the amount of times the tile can be used. This variable is located also inside the tile itself, which is over here. Number of current uses, or number of total uses, rather, which is set to 1 by default. Number of total uses set to the amount of times tile can be used. So everything is set up for the tiles depending on what your settings are here. The next thing in this while loop is to remove the tile from the index so it can't be chosen again. So it takes the random tiles index, and it takes the index we've been working on, index to randomize, and it removes that index from this array. So that way, the next time it does the while loop, however many tiles you want, it'll choose 4, 5, 6, 7 tiles you want to randomize. It'll remove that index, and the next time this while loop goes, it won't choose that same random tile again. So it always gets the correct amount of tiles you want to randomize. So this removes it from the index of random tiles. And last but not least, increase the amount of tiles currently with effects. So current random amount is how the while loop is running. So current random amount, while this is less than total amount of random tiles, we do this while loop. So let's say you want 2 random tiles. This current random amount is going to be set to 2. Oh no, wait, sorry. The total amount is going to be set to 2. This is always going to be 0 at start. So when you run through this code and it sets a single random tile, it will increase the current random tile amount by 1 and set the current random amount variable to the new amount. So this is set to 1. So it's still less than the total amount of random tiles, which is by default 2. And it'll do the while loop again. So one more time, it runs through everything, gets a random from available tiles. It sets the tile to has an effect, whether or not the tile can lose its effect, and if it can, how many times the effect can be used. Removes it from that index one last time, and increases the amount of tiles currently with effects by 1 once more. So once it gets to 2, that is no longer less than the total amount of random tiles, and this while loop is completed. So now we have 2 tiles. So to showcase some more of this, I can we'll set these 3 to tile random, and over here, total amount of random tiles, we can play with it a little bit. We'll set it to 4. So now there's 4 random tiles, and let's say each of the 4 random tiles have 2 effects. You can use the effect twice, and the positive percentage will set to 70%. So we can go in here. So we have 4 random tiles. Each tile can be used twice. So we can check. So this is the first tile that has an effect. The second tile that has an effect. Should be 2 more. Third tile, and the fourth tile that has an effect. So we set the positive effect to 70. So by default, this is going to have a higher positive chance of happening. So we can run over them one more time because they have 2 times. Now we get a negative effect for this one. Another negative effect. Negative effect again. And we have gotten 4 negative effects in a row, which is pretty rare because each of these are 30% chance. So if we step on them one more time, it doesn't do anything because we set it to 2 uses. So we can set these to 1 use again. Sets the positive percentage to 90. Negative, positive, positive, positive. Do it again. Oh, right. We have it at 1 use. We'll set it to 3. Positive, positive, negative, negative, positive, 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 negative, positive, negative, positive. So 90% chance to be positive. This is random, so it is based off of random variables, so this variable should work the right way. And that is the showcase of my mechanic, my random tile effects that can actually be implemented very easily into using different effects for these randomized tiles. The tiles themselves can actually be changed. I changed the element to be the material to be something different that I made, just to show that these are the random tiles. And yeah, thank you for watching.